Hello.
Hola.
Bonjour.
Привет, 你好.
What is a good translation? Well, everybody knows a translation is transferring something from one language to the other, right? But there's a lot more to a translation than meets the eye. And that's what I want to talk about, because there's I want to tell you about two different schools of thought when it comes to translations. One method is used very, very frequently, and in my opinion is not too good, and I'll show you why. And the second one makes up for a much more interesting job when you're translating. It will make you feel more curious. It will make you learn a lot more. It will make you use your neurons a lot more. So I think overall it's much, much better. But before I try to convince you, let me try to explain what it is. The traditional method is called Contrastive Method. And the method I'm going to be talking about is called the Interpretive Method. And it was developed by Danika Seleskovitch, who became the director of the ISIT, the interpreter school in Paris. She was a linguist and interpreter. And she did an amazing job just developing the theory, which ultimately actually is quite intuitive if you think about it. But not many people know about it, or not many people dare start using it. So I'll show you why it's actually simpler. Let's look at this PowerPoint. As I said, there's two methods, the contrastive method and the interpretive method. If you're using the contrastive method, of course, you're going to start with an original text, and you want to end up with the translation, right? So your first step for that is that you search for correspondences. That means that I'm going to try and avoid any technical terms here. You grab chunks, parts of a sentence, for example, and you try to find the exact equivalent in your target language. Now, the problem with that is that when linguists, for example, who do comparative linguistics, try to use this method, they start claiming that a lot of sentences are untranslatable, that there's no way to translate them because there is no semantic field that matches, or there is no similar structure from language A to language B. So that's a problem. But if you use, as you're going to see in a minute, the interpretive method, this problem completely disappears. So, okay, say we found correspondences for all the chunks of the sentence that we're going to translate. Then we try and see if they make sense together. If we didn't forget anything, it sort of makes sense, okay, and then we just make it pretty. Basically, we're rewording it so that it sounds a little more natural. And that's it, you're done. That's the contrastive method. The interpretive method, on the other hand, you have the original text, and you're going to do sort of like an eagle's view of the meaning. You're going to forget about the linguistic code completely. You're not looking for, let me find an adverb, because in the original sentence there's an adverb. You're just trying to see, okay, what is the author trying to convey here? And in this stage, apart from looking at the meaning and context and the whole text and in the particular sentence you're working on, you're also going to bring up a lot of what the author called cognitive complements. And that has to do with your general knowledge, with the knowledge you have about the topic in question, with searching in authentic material for words and expressions that will make your translation a lot better, because they'll be more naturally expressed. And as an aside, before you finish, you're always going to try to take the reader or the listener into account. After all, you're translating for them, right? And a lot of the times people who use the contrastive method forget this, and because they want to translate word by word and not forget any word, they end up doing some kind of they put redundant stuff in there that doesn't need to be there, and the text ends up heavy, and the reader kind of gets bored because they already know what you're talking about, so you don't need to repeat some words. We'll see it with an example in a minute. So that's the theory, okay? Now, just to show you now with a very, very simple example, I picked up languages that I know, but maybe you can come up with your own example in another language. Say you have this sentence. Я работаю на заводе. Or in Chinese, 我在工厂工作. French, je travaille dans une usine. And Spanish, trabajo en una fábrica. Okay, all of them are short and they mean the same. They actually mean I work at a factory. Maybe you knew that already. Now, if I use the contrastive method, I will start from the beginning. Я in Russian, 我, je, in order. That means I. Then работаю. I'm skipping Chinese for a second. Travail, trabajo, work. And at a factory is all the rest. In Chinese, you have a little bit of a complication there because the structure is different. Literally here, it means I am or I remain at a factory, or I remain factory work. And in Russian, you have other in Chinese, you also need to know how to split up the words. You have to know that this is one word, but this one here is one word, 工厂, factory, and this one is 工作, to work. In Russian, you have to know about verbs, prepositions, and cases. For example, here, this little e is showing me that is the prepositional case. Therefore, this preposition na means at a factory or at the factory. That's your choice in the translation, and not to the factory. The verb aspect, I'm going to leave that for another video, but it would also be a matter of a decision whether you say I am working or I work. In Chinese, if you know basic Chinese, then you'll know that the word order is such, and that Chinese doesn't use any little words like we use in English or in so many other languages. So it just says I stay factory work. And then in French, the difficulty will be to just remember that in French it's in a factory, factory being feminine, and in Spanish it's the same. In a factory, factory being feminine, and you have to know that this is a false friend. Fabrica doesn't mean fabric, but factory. And also that the subject is very often omitted because this little O here is telling us that it is I who's performing the action. But other than that, if you have a basic knowledge of any of these languages, you can translate it because it's pretty straightforward. I work at a factory. In this case, using the contrastive method is not a big deal. However, what happens when you have this mess over here? In Russian, you have приятного аппетита. In Chinese, 慢慢吃. In French, bon appétit. And in Spanish, buen provecho. If you're translating literally, word by word, you look at a dictionary, приятного means it has the possessive there, the genitive case, so it's something to do with having, something pleasant or agreeable. And then appetite, right? So you have a pleasant appetite, or you have a pleasant appetite. Doesn't make any sense in English, right? In Chinese, it gets even worse. When somebody tells you 慢慢吃, it just means enjoy your meal. But literally, it's slowly eat. So you may translate that for a friend, and you may tell them, well, this Chinese person is asking you to eat slowly. Must be very important for them or something. Maybe he thinks you're going to choke. So it's got nothing to do with what the person meant originally. Bon appétit, obviously you know that in English already, probably, so you're not going to say anything else but other than enjoy your meal, hopefully, but you could say good appetite, a good appetite. He thinks you have a good appetite. And buen provecho in Spanish, if you look at the dictionary, provecho could be something that you take profit of, advantage of, etc. So if you're a business meeting, for example, and the person tells you enjoy your meal, you may understand good profit. We're going to make good profit. See, so all these make up for really bad translations, and you sometimes see it in funny T-shirts that were mistranslated, or in signs in different countries, and it's because they use this contrastive method, word by word, and because obviously they lack knowledge in either the source or the target language.